Somebody, I don't know where to put it. Denver Broncos take a loss to the Las Vegas Raiders, 17-16. Raiders are kneeling the clock out right now. It's over, guys. An absolute shame of a way to lose this game. We really played well in that first half. In the second half, things just really fell apart. And now the Denver Broncos have picked up their 7th consecutive loss to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Broncos lose their home opener. They lose the Sean Payton debut. A horrible, ugly loss for us, Broncos country. And don't you dare start blaming Russell Wilson for this loss. You better not start blaming Russell Wilson for this loss. The defense let us down today. The defense absolutely let us down today. Oh. Looks like things are getting a little chippy on the field, rightfully so. Damn shame. Just a damn shame. What's going on, NFL kid? Good to see you. Oh, man. One more kneel down ought to do it. And there it is. Let's get out of here before we get heckled by Raiders fans, shall we? Oh, man. We'll go find a spot to sit down and we'll go over the game after this, Broncos country.
Today's final score, Raiders 17, Broncos 16.
That's such a disappointing loss. In the rain.
Hope to see you then.
Ultimately, that 3-and-out on the last offensive drive killed us. Jacoby Myers had Damari Mathis' number today. I can't wait to see the stats, but I know we did a pretty good job on the most part on Devontae Adams, but unfortunately that's all moot. All right, we're exiting the stadium now, guys. Roslyn says the kicker is pure trash. Gorjo says disgusting. Lil Luau says cut Lutz. D. Brown says, is this what the F we brought back Vance Joseph for? DH says Mathis is an issue. Yes, Mathis is a big issue. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we lost this game because we couldn't make our kicks. If we had just made that missed extra point, or if we could just miss, we've just made... DH says he got beat literally all day. We need a guy who can play with confidence alongside PS2. Absolutely, I could not agree more with that. Today was a horrible day for Damari Mathis. Unfortunately, excuse me guys, sorry, excuse me. Unfortunately, that's really the way it had been trending in training camp too. Damari Mathis did not have a good training camp. I'm disgusted. I am absolutely disgusted. Couple of killer penalties at inopportune times, couple of personal fouls. That one on Kareem Jackson really felt like the dagger. I hope Jacoby Myers is okay because he took a nasty shot there at the end of the game. We got 27 people in the house. DS says, I hate this team. I gotta be honest though, man. This doesn't leave me with a bad taste in my mouth that I know it leaves a lot of people. It's because this team actually executed on offense. It's on defense where I feel like we're really concerning. Vance Joseph sucks. Kicker is trash.
Our fans are winning.
Fans are, yeah. But
I was in the south stands. I got in trouble for standing up in front of the...
Really? Jeez. Sorry, guys. We're trying to go find a spot to sit down so we can finish this post game. Jace says Mathis looked so good under Evero. He did. But there were also some portions of his game where he definitely had to improve, and unfortunately he hasn't improved them. All right, guys, we're almost over here to the team bar area. We'll come in here and have a little seat and finish up the stream here. Oh boy, a lot of people. DH says that was not true. Mathis looked average last year at best. He was consistently called for PAI last year. That's definitely true. I mean, Mathis had good moments. He had bad moments in his rookie year. Today, Jacoby Myers took him to school. There's no other way around it. Jacoby Myers absolutely took him to school today. Rosalind says Sean Payton picked the wrong defensive coordinator. Justin says Elway seriously sold the Broncos' soul for Super Bowl 50. Yeah, I mean, where would you rather be though? In the Broncos' position, having won a Super Bowl in the past decade, or be in the position of the Raiders, where this is probably the biggest win they're going to get all year. So, just saying. Although things seem like doom and gloom right now, Broncos country, I mean, there were plenty of positive things to take away from this game. All right. Found my spot to do my show here. DG says kicker was trash. Jay says should have signed a veteran corner. Well, they did. They signed Trayvon Smith. They signed Fabian Moreau. But that doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence starting alongside Pat Surtain. Rosalind says, I don't understand why Sean Payton picked him to be the defensive coordinator when he was horrible with the Cardinals. Yeah. If you would have sat here and told me today that the defense was the reason why we lost this game and the kicking game, but not the offense, I probably wouldn't have believed you. All right. Let's just go ahead and get some stats up here. Al says Lutz is a puss. We blitzed and still no pressure. How? That's what I'm looking forward to seeing on tape, because that's a big issue. The Denver Broncos consistently brought 5-6 players on the rush, but they still weren't able to get home. And that is a huge problem that we're going to have to go and look at tape on. Danny says, I hate the Joseph hire. Boy, Vance Joseph is not the most popular guy in Broncos country right now, and rightfully so. His defense had a really horrible game. But some positive things to take away, man. Russell Wilson looked like the old Russell Wilson again for the most part, but unfortunately it felt like things really started to turn in the wrong direction after that fumble, which we got bailed out on because that was a bad illegal contact call on the Raiders, and that fumble would have stood if that wasn't a penalty. Lil Lau says the pass rush was a motherfucking shame. Shy says we suck. I don't think this team sucks. Same as last year, nuh-uh. Exotic says Russ throws 25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and we still go 6-11. Sucks this defense, man. Our kicker and red zone offense lost us this game. Danny says Wilson did his job. No sacks and not even a pressure, and Stern's probably out for the year. Yep, that's unfortunate. Russell does not suck. I'm sorry. I'm not going to... I agree, Dermeyer. Wins are all that matters. I mean, but at the end of the day, I can't just sit here and find every single negative thing to take away from this game. We've still got 16 more games to go. We've got to figure out what's working and what's not working. DJ says Russell did good, kickers trash. They should have kept Pat on Adams. The real issue was we couldn't cover Jacoby Myers on the other side of Adams. That was the big problem here. Jamari Mathis looked extremely lost. No, you're fine, RR. But still, I mean, it's frustrating when you feel like you do almost everything you can to win, and then your defense shits the bed, and then your kicker shits the bed. Literally, had Will Lutz not missed that extra point, we would have potentially had a game-tying situation, and that personal foul on Kareem Jackson would not have made the Raiders been able to run out the clock. Deshane says we needed Judy this game. I can't wait to go back and look at the film because I thought Brandon Johnson stepped up well. Danny says Peyton will get better as the year goes on. Russ was good. Nobody open downfield. No Judy, no Dulcis, no Patrick, no Alberto lacking weapons. I mean, there were some times where I saw some open receivers that Russell passed on, but I can't sit here in good conscience and blame Russell Wilson for this game. I just can't do that. Ricky says, bring back Wade. Absolutely. We had an X team, to be honest. The extra point in that 55 hurt us. I mean, really, Will Lutz hurt us, Damari Mathis hurt us, and badly timed penalties, and not being able to get a consistent pass rush. That's what really hurt us. It sucks, because we did all the things that I said we needed to do to get a win. Contain Max Crosby for the most part. Josh Jacobs, he's had one of our slower games against the Broncos. Oh yeah, there go the Raider fans. Jeez. Alto says Denver D couldn't get off the field on third down. Yep, we allowed them to convert several critical third downs. We're going to go home and holy crap, Ray Ann, the MVP in the house. Holy crap, 87-27. Thank you so much, Ray Ann. That is absolutely amazing. I really appreciate your support. Says, I miss McManus. Definitely would agree, man. The move to get rid of Brandon McManus is looking like a big L. Alex says, any word on Dulcich? No, not yet. BT, we looked good in the passing game in first half. Dulcich being out made a big difference. It did. 2 to 3 times our wide receivers took bad routes and didn't get first downs. Yep. Again, Rayanne, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Antelope says, I am sick. RR says, sad as hell, fire everyone. All right, Broncos country, this is your therapy. Go ahead and vent all your frustrations in the chat, guys. That's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about all of the frustrations that this team gave us today because although, again, there were plenty of positive things to take away, we lost the game. That's what ultimately matters. We lost the game. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up some stats here real quick, get rocking and rolling. Gabe Rock says Troutman couldn't break one tackle to get a first down. Yeah, that was a killer play. That was definitely a killer play. Pisses me off. I imagine Hackett watched laughing. I mean, coaching isn't the reason why we lost today. The reason why we lost today was special teams and defense. And yeah, you can probably boil that down to defensive coaching, but with special teams, man, the Broncos getting rid of Brandon McManus is going to be a move that I feel like haunts us the entire season. Just like James said, we had that one. But in those final 2 minutes, right after Kareem Jackson committed that personal foul, I knew we were going to lose. DJ says we'll bounce back next week. I sure hope so. We've got the Washington Commanders coming into town. They're riding high right now, coming off of a win off the Arizona Cardinals. Jeffrey says we got a putz. What's the putz? And that was ultimately the swing in this game. If Will Lutz had just made his kicks, that would have been the difference in this game for the Denver Broncos. Despite all of our defensive issues, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Damari Mathis here. I don't know if Damari Mathis is going to end up getting benched at some point this season. We've got other options at corner. I honestly felt like Jaquan McMillan could have usurped him in training camp. DJ says McLaughlin played scared today. Yeah, that's one thing I was definitely disappointed in. McLaughlin got a couple of opportunities to touch the ball and unfortunately didn't really do anything with it. Raiders fans rubbing in our face, getting all happy. Yep, I mean, the Raiders fans, they're always going to be crazy. Well, Antelope, Brett Maher didn't have a very good day in his own right from what I hear. I heard he had a pretty bad day up in Seattle against the for the Rams. So, I mean, Brett Maher wasn't the answer there. I feel like the answer at the end of the day would have probably been to just keep Brandon McManus. Texan says this is exactly what I warned. I mean, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. Dorsett's mistake was a game changer. Imagine if Judy played instead. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely. We're going to go through and review all of the tape when we get home, guys. And we'll talk about this defensive collapse. I think that probably takes priority over a Russell Wilson film study. We'll get a film study out what the hell happened with this Denver Broncos defense. Navet says, Russ was okay. D and special teams were a mess today. They were a mess. And Russ was far from perfect. I mean, he got away with one on that fumble that was called back by an illegal contact. Antelope says, at least we have CU to look forward to. That's right, still Buffs. But, yeah, man, it sucks. It definitely sucks. It seems that this team still has a ways to go. We're much better coached. I mean, the way we executed that 2-minute drive at the end of the half, I was really impressed with. Because with Nathaniel Hackett, that would have never happened. We would have come away with 0 points in that situation. I mean, hearing these Raiders fans definitely is frustrating. Same score as last year, week 1. Oh my God, it was. You're right, it was. Dude, that sucks. This has nothing to do with Russ. I agree. I mean, Russ had like one bad play, maybe two that you can really grade on tape. I'll go back and review it after we get home. But the thing that really bothered me, and I'm glad Antelope just brought it up, penalties. This team looked undisciplined at times out there. The penalties were just absolutely poorly timed. I think about some of those 10 penalties for 87 yards. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. That alone is what has to be cleaned up. No, Baron Browning sucks. Randy Gregory and Frank Clark look so slow. Where was Benito and Cooper? It was like they didn't exist. Yeah. Mundungus says no pass rush at all. Yeah. I can't wait to get on tape and just see exactly how the Raiders dominated us in the trenches. But they dominated us in the trenches, and ultimately that's why the Las Vegas Raiders won this game. That, and we had no answers at all for Jacoby Myers. Big statement for General Office upstairs. DJ says, we would have won by kicking the extra point and the 3 points everyone says we would have lost. Yep. I mean, I wouldn't have said we were going to the Super Bowl. This team looks far from a Super Bowl team, even if we would have won it. But at the same time, man, Alex, don't give up on the team that easily. Obviously, you do you, bud. But, I mean, I don't know. It's one game. We could have won this game if we had Jerry Jeudy on the field, like Mundungus says here. Zero interior pass rush, Antelope says. That's a big problem. Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that you have to bring interior pressure on in order for him to crumble. And unfortunately, Jimmy Garoppolo had all day to set up and throw back there. You're not going to be successful if Jimmy Garoppolo has all day to set up and throw back there. It's just that simple. Deshane says 3-3 mid-season. I could see that. I could see that. I don't know, man. I mean, this felt like a game that we really needed to win. And unfortunately, much like last year up in Seattle, we lose our week 1 opener, and it's not really even Russell Wilson's fault. That's the thing. Last year in Seattle, Russell Wilson had the offense on schedule. It was the 2 fumbles from Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams that killed us. This year, it was bad penalties, that lack of red zone offense that killed us. And not having Jerry Jeudy, it hurt. Yeah, these Raider fans, man, they're gonna go off, but let them. This is probably the biggest win they're gonna get all year. Dare I say the Raiders have hit their ceiling in week 1, because that's what it feels like. All right, so let's go ahead and get the box score stats going here. DH says, we gave away this game, which is annoying. Missed field goal and an extra point. Yep, those were the 4 points that swung it. Alex says, blessings all. Greetings from California. Greetings to you, Alex. Hope you are doing well, my friend. You know, these Raiders fans, man, I swear to God, they act like they just won the Super Bowl. They really do. Go ahead and pull up the box score here, guys. World Star going to make us look bad tomorrow? What do you mean by that, RR? What do you mean? This alone is unacceptable right here. Antelope, let me be clear. The Broncos beat themselves more than the Raiders beat us. Ding, ding, ding. What do we have for you, Johnny? I mean, absolutely. This was a prime example of the Broncos beating themselves. Penalties, failure to convert on a couple of critical third downs, especially on that last offensive possession. That one really killed us. And then again, just penalties. That Kareem Jackson penalty was a killer. That basically allowed the Raiders to run out the clock. Again, I really hope that Jacoby Myers is okay. That was a scary-looking injury. They almost had to bring the card out for him. That was a really scary-looking injury. Hope he's okay, but man, he made our lives hell today. Jimmy Garoppolo was 20 for 26 through the air, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception to Kareem Jackson in the end zone. Josh Jacobs, we did hold Josh Jacobs on the ground, which is, pisses me off that Josh Jacobs put up 19 carries for 48 yards in this game, and we still lost, and we were still able to contain fucking Josh Jacobs, except for that one missed tackle by Justin Simmons. But, oh, God. Chiefs lost too, exactly. I mean, there's several different ways you can look at this. I mean, if the Broncos just clean up those self-inflicted wounds, they win this game. It's not like Nathaniel Hackett last year where the self-inflicted wounds are just consistently too much to overcome. I mean, that last penalty ultimately ended up being the dagger, but this is not the same Broncos team as last year. Where was Benito and Greg Dulcich? Well, Dulcich got hurt before halftime, so he missed the entire second half. Benito was pretty much non-existent out there, and that's unfortunate. The Raiders' pass rush actually didn't really get home too much on Ross. I want to say he only got sacked like once or twice. Chargers lost? Let's go. Chargers lost. All right, that makes the day a little bit better. But the only thing that sucks there is that now means that the Las Vegas Raiders are in sole possession of first place in the AFC West. Listen to them, man. Colorado Buffalo's more interesting to watch. I mean, come on, we all knew that the Buffs were going to be the big talk of Colorado football this year anyway. I mean, Coach Prime, that team is legit, and they're a well-disciplined football team. So aside from Josh Jacobs on the ground, Jimmy Garoppolo had 9 carries for 11 yards. Zamir White with just 1 carry for 2 yards, had a big TFL. But this stat line right here is the big problem, guys. Jacoby Myers was 9 receptions for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. RR says Broncos need to hire Coach Prime. Coach Prime is never going to be in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm still confident in what Sean Payton's building here, but thus far, the biggest L move for the Denver Broncos was getting rid of Brandon McManus. Brandon McManus had his own inconsistencies last year, but if they were going to get rid of him, they should have had a more solid plan, and in my opinion, they should have drafted a kicker. That's just how I see it. Antelope says the first place hold by the Raiders will be short-lived. Exactly. Raiders fans, they're all celebrating like they just won the Super Bowl right now. Enjoy being on top of the division for 1 week because that's how long it's going to last. If this team is going to go down, the Broncos, then the Raiders are coming down too. But yeah, man, again, cornerback 2 is a big issue, allowing 9 receptions for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns on Jacoby Myers. Pat Surtain did a pretty good job on Damari Mathis. Pat Surtain did a pretty good job on Devontae Adams. 6 catches for 66 yards. 2 catches for 23 yards for Josh Jacobs. Oh, man. Yeah, Max Crosby did have 1 sack. Jerry Tillery also had a sack. But our pass rush was virtually non-existent in this one. Shut up! Fucking Raiders fans, I swear to God. Keep chanting, guys, seriously. That's going to be the biggest win you guys have all year. Meanwhile, with Russell Wilson, he definitely worked the quick game quite a bit in this one. There was a noticeable drop-off, I felt like, from the first half to the second half. Antelope says, especially when the Raiders play the Bills next week in Buffalo. Absolutely. Let's hope the Bills absolutely crush them. But Russell Wilson, 27 for 34, 177 yards, 5.2 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns. He was sacked twice. Javonte Williams, 13 carries for 52 yards. Samaje Perine, 8 carries for 41 yards. We ran the ball decent. I mean, we probably, I feel like, could have ran the ball a little bit more than we did. That's just me. This week will be the only week the Faders are on top of the division because they will fade like always. Absolutely. And same old Chargers, man. Esteban says Russ balled out. I mean, I wouldn't say Russ balled out, but he did play well. He played well enough for this team to win. Russell Wilson was far from our biggest problems last year, or from our biggest problem this year, or for this game, I should say. I can't fucking talk, but Jay says, any capital to try to trade for a pass rusher. I mean, not unless the team wants to give up a first-round pick, because we don't have a second-round pick because of the Sean Payton trade. We are going to get Baron Browning back at some point in October, it feels like, so the team may just hold out until they get Baron Browning back. I mean, right now we've got so much top-end money tied into that pass rush with Randy Gregory. I don't know if the Denver Broncos are going to do that. It's just frustrating. Yeah, he didn't ball out, I would say, but he definitely played well enough to win. Russell Wilson was not the problem in this game. The problem in this game was a lack of discipline, too many penalties, and quite frankly, not having a competent cornerback too alongside Pat Surtain. I'm worried about Damari Mathis. I didn't want to make a big deal out of this coming out of training camp, but Damari Mathis had a bad training camp. He had a really bad training camp. Doug says, same team, different year. This is not the same team. Trust me. Nathaniel Hackett's Broncos would have lost this game by 20. They would have probably only scored once. I mean, just the execution from this team was night and day difference from Nathaniel Hackett's Broncos. Like, we wouldn't have scored at the end of the half if it were Nathaniel Hackett's Broncos. We would have had like a 3-timeout meeting basically trying to determine what the snap count was on the friggin' third down play. Was Frank Clark hurt? No, he wasn't hurt. He just wasn't playing well. And Frank Clark, man, he had a slow training camp, and Jonathan Cooper beat him out for that starting spot in training camp. Frank Clark has not lived up to really any amount of hype that he's gotten since he came to Denver. I honestly feel like Frank Clark's a little bit of a liability out there at this point. I was not a fan of the Broncos bringing in Frank Clark. I thought last year in Kansas City he lost a step, and now, unfortunately, it's starting to become pretty damn clear that Frank Clark is pretty washed, honestly. RR says, get rid of Mathis. It's going to be interesting to see how they go about Mathis next week, because Commanders really only have one strong wide receiving option, and that's Terry McLaurin. So next week's going to be a much better assignment for Damari Mathis. But if he continues to struggle out there, I would not be surprised at all if we potentially saw Fabian Moreau out there at corner. I thought they should have put in Fabian in this game, honestly, because Fabian Moreau played really well for the Giants last year. What do you think about that onside kick to start the game? I liked it. I was a big fan of that, actually. Try to steal a possession from the Raiders. It was a gutsy call by Sean Payton. Unfortunately, we couldn't execute it correctly, but I liked the idea on paper. I definitely did. Tried to steal possession there and try to get points. That was huge because the Broncos did get the ball heading into the second half. So that would have been huge if the Broncos would have been able to score on that opening possession if they did recover and then score coming out of halftime. That would have really helped the team out. But next week will be a big test for the O-line, yeah, and I'm a little scared. I'm not going to lie. I am a little scared because Max Crosby did have some plays where he made Mike McGlinchey look rough. And Washington has two formidable edge rushers in Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And then their interior defensive line is absolutely just terrifying with Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. So, I don't know, man. I actually had the Broncos losing that game against Washington. That's why it was so critical for us to pick up a win in this game. And unfortunately, we just couldn't do it. And, I mean, I'm hoping that this loss doesn't set the tone for the rest of the season like last year's did. And with Sean Payton, I'm confident that's not going to happen. This loss isn't going to dwell on the locker room the same way that Seattle did. Do you think the Broncos will play Riley Moss this season? I do. I mean, if Damari Mathis continues to play this poorly, the team is going to have to figure something else out at corner. And if that something else ends up being Riley Moss, then great. I mean, he was drafted with a premium pick in the third round. The team really likes him. Unfortunately, he got injured pretty early in camp and wasn't out there for a majority of training camp. But yeah, man, Riley Moss, I think he will see some playing time at some point if the Broncos continue to struggle at that second boundary corner spot. One thing that's positive, I thought Usain Bassi looked really good as a nickel. Hunter Renfrow was non-existent today, and he's a guy that I was worried was really going to light us up. So I'm confident about our first boundary corner spot, obviously, with Pat Surtain. I thought he had a pretty big day today, except for that one pass interference penalty that he gave up. But aside from that, man, I'm concerned when Jacoby Myers is absolutely destroying Damari Mathis like that. That is cause for some big issues here. So next week, guys, this team is going to have to clean up the sloppy penalties in those key situations, especially on that key play there. The Broncos had Jacoby Myers stop short, and then Kareem Jackson levels him. You can't do that, man. I love you, Kareem, but that's not the first time you've committed a penalty like that that's become a liability. We got Jarhead Jaw in the house. Welcome in, my friend. Good to see you. Good to see you. Let's go back over here to the stat line, guys. Again, you know, our run game I thought looked effective enough. I would have liked to have seen us commit to running the ball a little bit more towards the end of the game, but that's just me. Unfortunately, on that last drive, the Raiders did sniff out our opening run, and then after that, we just couldn't really recover from that drive. We ended up in a 3rd down and 11 situation. Troutman should have broken tackles there to get the first down, and I feel like if he hadn't have gotten injured, that probably would have been Greg Dulcich in that situation. So we'll continue to wait and see what happens here with Greg Dulcich. Russell Wilson is at the podium right now. Says that he's really frustrated the Broncos couldn't finish drives in this one. That's definitely true. 7 straight losses does sting, and that's a losing streak that I feel like is going to get a lot more attention now. And what sucks is we can't right this wrong until the last regular season game, and by that point, God knows where this team's season is going to be at. Payton needs to be fired. George Payton needs to be fired. He has screwed us with his terrible moves in free agency and the draft. I mean, you're not wrong. There's been some really bad moves and some bad misses by George Payton. And the move that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough is he's the guy who traded away Von Miller and bringing in Randy Gregory when Vaughn wanted to come back to the team after being traded away. That was a big issue. Deshane says, just remember what Peyton Manning said about Russ. I'm not sure what Peyton said about Russ, but again, guys, to pivot back to the Russell Wilson conversation, what we saw from him was exactly what I had seen in training camp. Lots of quick passes, a couple of bootlegs, get the ball out of Russ's hands quickly, and then give him the opportunity to get some plays off schedule and on the run. And Russ was able to do that in this one. Russell Wilson looked a lot closer to the Russell Wilson that we traded for. Not saying that he's anywhere close to that level, but he looked closer to that Russell Wilson than he did the Russell Wilson that was a big problem and a big liability for us in several games last year. Just like Esteban says, Russ is far from the problem. I'm concerned about this defense, a lack of pass rush, struggles at the boundary corner spot alongside Pat Surtain. Those are all big issues. If you had told me that Damari Mathis was going to get torched by Jacoby Myers, I mean, I don't think I would have been too surprised, but that's mostly because of Jacoby Myers. I wouldn't have thought Jacoby Myers wouldn't have been that big of a world beater. But again, Damari Mathis, a lot of fans did not like hearing this, but he did not have a good training camp, and he did not have a good preseason. And unfortunately, that is all starting to translate here into the regular season. Damari Mathis was a liability out there alongside Pat Surtain. I mean, the team probably should have at least entertained re-signing Ronald Darby, if we're being completely honest. Before he got injured last year, Darby was playing lockdown corner football. And right now, man, if the Broncos continue to have a liability alongside Pat Surtain, it doesn't matter how good Pat Surtain is, you're going to have team's number 2 wide receiver tear us up. And that's exactly what happened here. Jay says maybe more blitzing can help. The thing is, we did blitz today. We just couldn't get home. That's the problem. We couldn't get home when we did blitz. Fight for freedom. What do you think lost us the game? Again, defense lost us the game today. Penalties lost us the game today. And missing field goals and extra points ultimately lost us the game. Takamine or Takamine says, I think McGlinchey held Crosby good. He did have a couple bad reps that I saw on the Jumbotron. I'm going to go home and watch the game over and see what happened, and we'll do a film study on what happened. But McGlinchey did have a couple of rough plays on Crosby from what I saw. We lost with 16 points in overtime last year against the Raiders, with Russ having 70 more passing yards and 2 touchdowns under Nathaniel Hackett. And how did we lose that game last year against the Raiders? Same damn way, pretty much. A defensive collapse. So, yeah, man. Russ did good enough, but the entire team played just okay. Not good enough to win. Absolutely. All right, guys, I can see people are starting to really clear out of the stadium here. We got Jess in the house. What's going on, Jess? Good to see you. Let's go ahead and walk outside here. Always good to see you, Jess. One of the mods and longtime members of the Denver Broncos Syndicate community. All right, yeah, let's head out. Let's see, is it still raining outside? See if the rain's calmed down at all. Rain was really starting to pour down there. Takamine says, we need receivers. Yep, we need Jerry Jeudy to be healthy. That's the first step of this. All right, country. I realize I can't really move away from here. Otherwise, I'm going to lose stadium Wi-Fi, and my service sucks out here. So Esteban says, love your reporting, bro. Keep up the good work. We will bounce back. We're going to have to, because next week we've got a very tough opponent coming in here in the Washington Commanders. Jess says, is it just me, or did this feel like our 4th preseason game? It's not a bad comparison, honestly. I mean, it's all going to come down to how this team responds next week. That's really how it's all going to come down to. Then I will have my full judgment of what I think this team is going to look like. Last year, we were unable to bounce back when we were faced with any form of adversity. So that's going to define Sean Payton as a coach for the Denver Broncos, I feel like, is how can this team bounce back from this loss where we beat ourselves. We beat ourselves. The Raiders didn't beat us today. We beat ourselves. That's what happened. So if we can clean up those penalties, got to figure out what's going on with Damari Mathis, man. If we need to put in Fabian Moreau at the other corner spot, do it. DJ, they should go get Mike Evans, he says. I mean, I feel like they need to address corner a little bit more than wide receiver. I mean, I'm concerned about Damari Mathis. I'll say it again, this is exactly what we saw from Mathis in training camp and in certain parts of the preseason when he wasn't going up against practice squad scrubs, basically. Raiders fans have no respect at our stadium. They don't. No, that's a fact. This is now my 4th Raiders game that I have been to. Unfortunately, I've only seen the Broncos beat the Raiders in person once. That was 2019, their very last game as the Oakland Raiders. That game, I remember it was extraordinarily cold. Drew Lock was the quarterback in that one, and Shelby Harris batted down a game-winning 2-point conversion from Derek Carr. That ultimately was the last time that the Denver Broncos beat the Raiders. Let this sink in, Broncos country. The Denver Broncos have never beaten the Las Vegas Raiders. The last thing the Oakland Raiders ever did was lose to the Denver Broncos. Well, now the first thing that the Las Vegas Raiders did was put up a 7-game win streak against the Denver Broncos. That's rough, and that hurts, because the Raiders are that team, man. It's personal with the Raiders. You have to beat the Raiders. You just do. Jess says, considering our first string hasn't played a few weeks and losing more key players, I think this may account for some of the clunkiness. Some good signs, some big needs, and a lot to clean up. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. There's a lot to clean up here, and it's just all going to be if we do clean that up. I will feel a lot more confident about this team if we go into next week against Washington. We don't have any of these killer penalties. I mean, that's really what killed those drives for us. And if Damari Mathis can put together a more complete performance, then I feel like things are going to fare a lot better against Washington. Sam Howell did not look very good based on my initial hearings of what happened in Washington. I haven't watched that game. I'll go through and I'll watch all the games at some point. If you guys haven't checked it out, I've actually got another channel called Sparkin' Sports NFL, where I do film studies of all 31 other teams. Obviously, all the Broncos coverage stays here on Denver Broncos Syndicate, but if you guys want to watch any of my film content not related to the Denver Broncos, please be sure to go check out Sparkin' Sports NFL, because on that one I just put out yesterday a film study of Jared Goff. Also got one on there about how Travis Kelce really makes the whole Chiefs offense go. So be sure to go check that out. All right, guys, I'm going to start heading towards the bus here. I want to get home and I want to go watch the film and see what the fuck happened in this game, quite frankly, because there's so much that I still need to see because I was here in person and didn't see it on the TV. You do miss a bit. So I'm going to go home, watch the game, get a film study out, and then we'll get a better grasp as to what actually happened with this team and if it really can be fixed next week against the Washington Commanders. I'm grateful we have at least a competent... Yes! I mean, we have competent coaching from a head coaching perspective. I don't know if we have competent coaching from a defensive coordinator perspective, but the way the game management in this game was night and day different, and that gives me a lot of optimism. Sean Payton executed that 2-minute drive at the end of the half brilliantly. I didn't think it was really all on Russ. I don't think it was on Russ at all, Charles. That's just me. He didn't have time pretty much downfield, and even when he did have time, receivers just didn't catch it and released. I mean, he did release to his check down, but that's because receivers weren't really open downfield. That's something I could see pretty well. I'd always look downfield, and he just didn't really have too many open options down there. So those check downs, for the most part, were good check downs. All right, Broncos country, I'm going to go ahead and dip out of here. Be sure to leave a like on this stream, guys. I would really appreciate it. That is a free and easy way to show your support. Helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out and helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country, just like you and me. And also, guys, again, please be sure to check out Sparkin' Sports NFL for continuing NFL coverage on all the other 31 teams. All right, guys, and until next time, thank you so much to Ray Ann for the donation. I am your host.